You're about to watch me build 3 Upwork brief worth a total of about $6,000 into working AI automations. Because yes, sometimes those AI workflows do require some expertise that you may not have. But there is a specific framework that AI experts use to build those, and that's something that can 100% be learned. And that's the behind the scene that I want to show you today so that you can start doing this yourself. Okay, so let's scroll through Upwork and try to find something interesting. Okay, so here is one that I think we could do something cool with. Essentially, this is a client that's looking to build sort of a resume enhancer. So something where you would just, or the users would just upload their resume, and then it would give a bunch of suggestions, and then it would just give you the improved resume version. And it sounds from the brief here that the client doesn't necessarily have a tech stack in mind. I mean, they have a form tool that they use, but then they just say to use GPT-4. Obviously, GPT-4 out of the box is not going to do everything here. And so I think what would be really cool here is to have a proper interface for this resume enhancer and to have an actual web app where the user can just come in, log in, upload the resume, and have a nice sort of dashboard with the recommendations and everything from there. So I want to use Lovable to do this easily, and I'll walk you through the whole process. Okay, so we're on Lovable, and let's think about a good prompt for this. Okay, this is my prompt, and I think I can go into a bit more details, but I think this will be enough. This is a pretty simple app at the end of the day. So let's just see what it does. Okay, so we actually have a pretty good result off the get-go. And I think it's pretty simple. You know, they're just going to upload their resume, get the AI analysis. So we're going to have to hook up OpenAI for this, and then they'll get their recommendations. Now, what I'm thinking here is actually that it's going to be pretty complicated to get a pretty consistent format for the enhanced resume. Meaning that if you think about a resume, people will have different design, layout, and format for it. So it's going to be hard to have, you know, an output that's going to look exactly like the initial resume, but just with the recommendations. So probably here, I would have to go back to the client and explain to them that it's not really possible in a way to do what they wanted to do. But we can definitely have the recommendations, and then the user would just have to take those recommendations and copy paste it into their resume. But we'll get to that in a bit, because actually the next first step is going to be to integrate Supabase so that we have a database for those people. So we want to have, you know, people that log in and then capture their information and keep it somewhere on a database. Otherwise, you know, when they come back to the tool, they're not going to have their resume recommendations. So for this, we're going to integrate Supabase, and we're going to have the auth in place, the storage, and everything that we need with the Supabase integration. Okay, so now we're connected with Supabase, and we have our table here. So we'll be able to capture all of the information that they input, and also just to save the initial resume that they will upload. So now the next step is going to be to connect OpenAI so that we can have our, you know, AI analysis working well in the backend. So just as a side note here, if you build apps like this in Lovable, you never want to just copy paste the OpenAI key in the chat, because now there's going to be in the code, and potentially it's going to be exposed publicly to people looking in your source code. So what you want to do is that you want to create a secret key in Supabase, and then tell Lovable that this is where to find the key. But now it's going to be safely stored inside of Supabase instead of being something that Lovable can actually access. Okay, so after doing this, I did a bit of troubleshooting just to see if it would work, and we got to a pretty good place. I'm just going to use this mock-up resume that I have here that I found online just to go through the process, but it's uploaded. So let's see what the next step will be. And again, the process is going to be that they upload the resume, the AI is going to analyze the resume and then ask me a few follow-up questions. And then based on those answers, it's going to give me some final recommendations to improve the resume. So these are the questions based on that mock-up resume. I think it looks pretty cool. So let's just see what I can put here and what it gives me. Okay, so here are the recommendations. And I get it suggested a few fields that maybe was not on the initial resume, although I see that all of these seem to be on the resume right here. It didn't have, I guess, a LinkedIn profile, so that would be, I guess, recommendations that it gives that you can add to this. And then it just suggested a few lines that you can add to your experience and, you know, the work experience here that I think are pretty cool based on the answers that I give it. And it just sort of rewrote a few of the skills that we have, the one that I gave really, and how this could sort of translate in their resume. There are a few weird things like those empty sort of lines here. And I guess we could sort of craft the system prompt for this to be a bit more relevant. But I think, you know, as a first example and just to kind of show you what this would look like, I think this is pretty cool. And I think this client would be pretty happy because, again, I think initially they did not envision such a cool sort of app that we built. So I think this would be a pretty good improvement on sort of what they had in mind. And again, because it looks like there's going to be a pretty high volume of resume that they're going to upload. Having this app and dashboards and the database is going to be much better than what I think they had in mind, which is just to use some kind of custom DBTO project where you're not going to have all of those data and a good way to store all of this. So yeah, again, all in all, I think this would be a good start for this project. And so a lot of times when I do this kind of projects for the client, they have an idea in mind, a vision, but you're also here to nudge them in the right direction into what's actually going to be the best user experience based on your experience. All right, so let's find another one. Okay, so here we have, I think, one that could be interesting. So the client is having multiple client meetings and they use a Google Doc to take notes and input the to-dos from that meeting. And then they manually put it into Basecamp, and they're essentially just looking to have all of this automated. And in this case, I would advise them to use something like Fireflies, which will sit into their Zoom meeting, listen to everything, and then create those to-dos for them. So they don't have to have someone take notes, but Fireflies will do this for them. And then just use the native integrations that Fireflies has to port that into Basecamp. I use Trello myself, so what I can show you is the kind of output that you can get. But if you look at the last call that I had with a client, Fireflies was able to just take all of those tasks that we mentioned on the call and then create individual Trello cards directly for me. So for example, this is one of them. We talked about some restructuring to the website, and Trello just went ahead and created a task for me in my Trello based on the Zoom call that I had, because Fireflies was just listening in and taking notes for me. So again, you don't have to have someone, take the notes, put it into a Google Doc, analyze this, and then take the to-dos and put that into Basecamp. You can just use essentially just Fireflies to do all of this in one go. So if this was a real client, that's what I would tell them, and they don't really need me to do this. They don't need to pay me for this workflow because it's already pretty much set up in Fireflies. I use the free account. They can probably just upgrade if they have a lot of meetings, but it would pretty much just do the job. But if they really wanted to pay me for this and they just still wanted to stick to their current workflow, I would probably set something up in Any10. So this is pretty much the workflow that I would have for them. They would have a Google Drive with all of those Google Doc, and that's going to be the trigger. Now, if you set up Fireflies the right way, Fireflies would upload those notes, the transcript from the call directly into a Google Drive folder, and that could also be the trigger. So either they do it manually, which again, I don't recommend, or they just let Fireflies do this for them, and that will be the trigger that we have here. Now we have a node that is just there to sort of reformat that transcript into something that we're going to be able to feed into the LLM chain. So that's what we have here. Pretty simple, straightforward body prompt here, system prompt. It's just, here is the text from the Google Doc. You need to sort of extract the to-dos item and then return sort of one line per item. And that's going to be important when we then sort of reformat this to send it to Basecamp, because it's going to be one item in Basecamp for each of the to-dos. And then again, we are going to split this out into those separate different items and then have a HTTP request to put this onto Basecamp. There is no native integration of Basecamp with Any10, so that's why we have to use this HTTP request. But that would essentially be the workflow. Again, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Probably easier to automate this all with Fireflies, but if they really wanted to stick to their current workflow, that's what I would do for this project. And that would probably be enough. So with that in mind, let's just move on to the next project. Okay, so we have a pretty enigmatic brief here, and everything is supposed to be in this Google Doc. I don't know if I should open it, but just for you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get a potential virus. Okay, so no virus as it seems. This is an 8 and 8 project. I think I'm going to stick to Any10, but let's see if we need to learn this whole new tool. Yeah, so essentially this is a bunch of different tasks. So let's try to tackle them one by one. I might not do all of them, but let's see what we can do here. Starting with this one, and apparently the client wants to have a daily automation in their Slack where they want to check in with the team to see, what's going on, how the project is going, and just to ask a few follow-up questions. And it's not a lot of detail, to be honest, but this is when I would probably have to think a little bit with the client and brainstorm what we can do. But essentially, I think what I would suggest, because they're probably using some kind of task management software, so let's say Trello or Basecamp, I was just in before, and this is probably where they have the project status and the deliverables, everything that we promised to the client. And so I think I want to have this being fed into an LLM node, and then have ChatGPT essentially just think about those and ask a relevant questions every day to the team member based on the current progress on that project, and then send that message off to Slack. So we have, the input being the project manager, the current status, everything that's going to be in there. ChatGPT thinking about a good question to ask for the team member, and then that message is then going to be posted on Slack into the relevant channel. So with this in mind, let's try to build this into A10.8. No, I'm kidding. Just build this into an A10 and see what it looks like. Okay, so I built this out, and I think this is probably the easiest way to build this automation. Again, I would probably need a bit more information, but this is what we're working with. So I'm going to have a trigger that's scheduled every day. Probably at 8 a.m. or something. Or maybe if you just want to check in midday, then I would probably just have this around noon or 1 p.m. And essentially, this would come and get a specific list inside of Trello. So let's say the list that is assigned to this client, and that's going to hopefully contain the current project status, the deliverables, and everything that we would need to know in order to ask a question about how's it going. Then I'm going to have a basic LLM chain with this system prompt. So pretty simple, but your product manager, based on this list on ongoing projects and the task below, ask me questions to keep me accountable and check in on my progress. And then it's going to be just the previous node outputs. So essentially just whatever we found into that Trello list. By the way, I'm just using GPT 4.0. Maybe for this, we don't need something so powerful. So you can maybe get away with something cheaper like Gemini Flash. And then the output of this would be posted into the relevant Slack channel, whatever that is. Obviously, I don't have access to this, but essentially the message text would just be whatever we had generated by ChatGPT. And that would probably much be it. I mean, this is a pretty straightforward message. I would probably have to tweak the prompt a little bit so that it's not the same thing every single day. But this is a good start. And based on the specific of the project, we would probably tweak this up a little bit, but it would be pretty much ready to go. Okay, so the next task here, quite frankly, does not require any AI because it's actually just a Google form that we sent to the client for them to fill. And then based on the outcome, the output of this, we're just going to send that to the designer. I guess we don't really need any AI here, but if we were trying to make this extra good, we could have some kind of LLM node in the middle that would sort of shape up whatever the client inputted into the form. Because sometimes when you have an onboarding form that you give to the client, they don't really spend a lot of time on it, and they give you pretty partial answers. So if we had some kind of LLM in the middle to just sort of format this and expand on it a little bit without inventing anything, then it would probably be a better thing to send to the designer so that they have everything that they need. Again, we're going a little bit overboard. I don't think you need AI for this, but just for the sake of it, let's try to build this workflow. Okay, so here we go. And for this and simplicity, I've just used the native form of Anytime. Obviously, this would have to be replaced with the Google form for the client, but we're just sending this to the LLM with a pretty simple system prompt. Again, your project manager, your job is to pass this information from the client intake and add some comment to make it easier to scope out the project. And that's going to be what we pass out to the designer. And this output would then, again, just be sent into the relevant Slack channel or just to the relevant team member. Now, depending on the kind of information that we collect here, we may need to reformat this a little bit. So maybe there's going to be an extra code node here just to, again, just format this so that the LLM can understand. But that would be essentially this workflow. Pretty straightforward. Let's look at the next task. Okay, and that's probably going to be the last one that I do for this client. So, all of this I'm just going to skip. But just to go back to this task, the client wants to build some kind of bot, and that's often has the client describe this, but they want something that is probably AI powered, where you can just feed it some information and anytime a team member has a question, a technical question, then the bot, the chatbot, would be able to answer this based on all of the information. So obviously, what the client is describing here is some sort of rack system, and there's definitely ways to go overboard with this. I'm just going to assume that this is a pretty simple setup that we're looking for here. So we don't have to build a whole vectorial database and then have this whole crazy system to pull out the information. The client probably only has a few documents, and so we don't need to go too complicated here. Okay, so essentially 2 ways to tackle this in a pretty simple way. The first one would be to use Notebook LM. That's really the easiest way to build those on-the-fly rack system. Although again, I don't think the client really needs to pay anyone to do this, but that would be the easiest way to resolve this. And I'm going to show you how to set this up in just a sec. The second way to do this would be to create a custom project in ChatGPT. And both of those would be something that you can share with the team members, and that would do exactly what we want here. And I've shown the whole process in many videos, so I'm not going to go too much into details, but essentially you would create a new GPT here, and you would input the different things that we need. So essentially just a name, description, the system prompt, which would be something like, hey, you're a helpful technical assistant based on all of the knowledge files that we're going to upload. Answer those questions, always be helpful, don't hallucinate, don't invent anything. If you don't know, just say it, blah, blah, blah. So we would have this whole system prompt essentially here, and then a knowledge base where we upload all of the documents that the client is mentioning here. So, all of the info necessary. This would probably be a handful of documents that we just upload here. And that would be a custom GPT that we can go ahead and share with the team members. And every time they have a technical question, it would probably be able to properly pull out the information from the knowledge files and then respond to the question. The other option that I mentioned is Notebook LM, which might be a little easier actually, where same thing, you would just upload all of your knowledge base, all of your files. If those live in a Google Drive, you can do that. If it's a website, you can do that. So if you have already like a help center or a documentation on your website about all of those technical questions, you can just directly link it here. Or if you have YouTube videos about the topic, you can also do that. Or just copy paste a text, or just upload a good old PDF. So I've gone ahead and linked my website as a source here. Now, to my knowledge, there is no such thing as a system prompt in Notebook LM. It's kind of designed off the bat to be sort of a helpful assistant, to look at the files and reply to the question. So if you're looking for flexibility, I guess a custom GPT would be better. But if you just want something very simple that anyone can really upload something to, then that would be a really good option. And so it will give you a written answer for what you're looking for, but you can also turn that into an AI podcast or into an explainer video or a mind map. So, if you're more visual and your team member just, prefer to have different format for getting those answers, then that would actually be a pretty cool option. And this is completely free. And we didn't even need to use 8 and 8. And that's pretty much how I would deliver all of these projects on Upwork if these were clients. Now, obviously, if I was actually to take on this project, I would have a conversation with the client before doing any of this, getting more context, scoping out exactly what they're envisioning, and also sort of nudging them in the right way about what's possible, what's going to be a better user experience, and just again, use my experience to tell them the best way to go about it. But I hope this was helpful for you to start thinking about how you could tackle this kind of AI project for your own business, even if you're not an AI expert, and just sort of the thought process that goes into these kind of projects. And if you like using these kind of tools where you don't need to be an AI expert and you can still build some pretty cool things, check out my video where I built an entire marketing funnel just using AI tools and no coding knowledge. So go ahead and check this out right now. But if you just want to keep updated with new AI automation, new tools, and sort of the latest thing that you can do into your business, then subscribe to my free newsletter. That's going to be in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.